Good afternoon. As you all saw, the President delivered remarks at the Latino Coalition Summit this afternoon. The business leaders in attendance are living proof that the American dream is back and stronger than ever under President Trump's leadership. As the President noted, last year Hispanic unemployment reached the lowest level in history. It has now remained below 5% for the longest period ever recorded. Latino-owned businesses are thriving like never before, contributing nearly $500 billion to our economy last year alone. And with the President's pro-growth policies, this is only the beginning. The last couple of weeks, we have been highlighting Senate Democrats' historic efforts to obstruct the ability of the government to function. A stunning 43% of the President's highly qualified nominees are still waiting for confirmation in the Senate. Senator Schumer's tactics have led to 102 fewer confirmations than the next closest administration. As I noted before, blocking Rick Grinnell from serving as ambassador to Germany is putting our national security in jeopardy. Today, I'd like to highlight Ulim Poblik. It has been almost 150 days since Dr. Poblik was nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of State for Arms Control, Verification, and Compliance. She would work to verify compliance of arms control, including disarmament agreements and missile defense cooperation. We need her in place so she's able to fully represent the United States at upcoming international meetings to discuss Syria's use of chemical weapons and to participate in April's nuclear non-proliferation treaty preparatory committee meetings. Say that really fast. And yet Senator Schumer is holding her up, putting the safety and security of the American people and frankly the entire world in danger. Senator Schumer is blocking nominees indiscriminately. He forces time-wasting procedural votes on nominees and then eventually votes in support of them. Just yesterday, the Senate had to waste precious floor time on a universally respected nominee, Terry Doughty, who was confirmed 98-0. Even Senator Schumer eventually voted in favor of the nominee, yet still demanded the Senate go through archaic Senate procedure that delays votes and wastes the American people's time. It's a disgrace, it's dangerous, and it must come to an end. And with that, I will take your questions.
Sarah, on the tariffs, does the President expect to sign the tariffs tomorrow? And can countries like Mexico and Canada and allies within the European Union expect to have a pathway to gain an exemption from the tariffs?
We expect that the President will sign something by the end of the week, and there are potential carve-outs for Mexico and Canada based on national security, and possibly other countries as well, based on that process.
Specifically, what would they have to do?
Again, that would be a case-by-case and country-by-country basis, but it would be determined whether or not there is a national security exemption. Cecilia.
So far this year, 6 top White House staffers have resigned. The President says there are more names to come. Why are so many people leaving this administration?
Look, this administration has had a historic first year. We're going to continue to do great things. This is an intense place, as every White House, and it's not abnormal that you would have people come and go, but we're continuing to do great work. We're continuing to focus on the President's agenda, and that's what we're all here to do.
But actually, it is actually abnormal. No administration in recent history has had this much turnover.
But I said it's not abnormal to have turnover.
If this is not the definition of chaotic, how would you describe what's happening in these recent weeks?
If it was, then I don't think we would be able to accomplish everything that we've done. The economy is stronger than it's been in ages. ISIS is on the run. The remaking of the judiciary. Jobs are coming in at record numbers. There are historic things that have taken place in the first year. Sounds like a very functioning place of business to me. Steve.
Talk about potential carve-outs. Are you also talking about NATO allies as possibly getting this exemption?
It'll be a country by country, and it'll be based on national security.
Let me follow up. Today, the President tweeted, China has been asked to develop a plan for the year for a $1 billion reduction in the trade deficit. What's he talking about?
Yeah.
Did he make this recently, or has he been talking to the Chinese?
We had conversations with officials last week, and we're going to continue those conversations with them. The President's been very clear that he wants to address the trade imbalance that the United States has with a number of countries. He feels like the United States has been taken advantage of for far too long, and he's not going to allow that to continue under his watch.
Have they responded?
I'm sorry?
Have they responded?
We're continuing conversations with them. Jeff.
Sarah, you've said repeatedly that we've addressed our feelings on that situation in regards to the Stormy Daniels payment. But specifically, can I ask, did the president approve of the payment that was made in October of 2016 by his longtime lawyer and advisor, Michael Cohen?
Look, the president has addressed these directly and made very well clear that none of these allegations are true. This case has already been won in arbitration, and anything beyond that, I would refer you to the president's outside counsel.
When did the president address specifically the cash payment that was made in October of 2016?
The president has denied the allegations against him. And again, this case has already been won in arbitration. Anything beyond that, I would refer you to outside counsel.
Did he know about that payment
Jeff.
at the time, though?
I've addressed this as far as I can go.
But that payment, did he know about the payment at the time?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, anything beyond what I've already given you, I would refer you to the president's outside counsel. Steve?
Michael Cohen about that, since this has become a news story this week. Has he talked to Michael Cohen about it? If I can just ask one more thing.
I'm sorry?
Has he talked to Michael Cohen about that this week?
I don't
since
know.
This has become news.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Sarah, this administration has now imposed additional sanctions on North Korea after concluding that Kim Jong-un's government assassinated his half-brother using VX nerve agent in Malaysia. Now we have authorities in Britain have announced that a nerve agent was used to try to kill a former Russian double agent and his wife. Obviously, Moscow, the prime suspect. What does this administration have to say about this attempted assassination in the UK? And are sanctions against Russia likely as they were in the case of the North Koreans?
This is currently under review, and I'll keep you posted as we have further information and developments on that front. Margaret?
Thank you. I want a quick clarifying question on the China tweet, and then I had a NEC question. Is there any chance that if China did respond on that $1 billion reduction plan, that could assuage or affect the shaping of this tariff plan before it is announced at the end of the week? In other words, is China's piece of this tariff thing negotiable, or are we only talking about tweaking Canada, Mexico, EU countries?
Hold on, let me address it first.
Okay.
The president's been clear that he wants to address the trade imbalances and the unfair practices, and certainly we would take anything into consideration, but as of right now, we're moving fully ahead, and anything that would change would be done so on a national security basis. Any decision for carve-outs.
Okay. Obviously, you're going to take your time and space on making the next NEC decision, but can you give us sort of a scope of the short list? And there's two names in particular I wanted to bounce off of you in this room, just among friends here. Larry Kudlow and Andy Pudster. Can you confirm that those two are among the names under consideration? And how much of a role is Gary Cohn himself going to have in helping the president make that pick to succeed him?
I'm not going to get into any naming or a list, but I can tell you that the president has a number of people under consideration, and he's going to take his time making that decision.
With Gary Cohen leaving, Senator Cornyn, Republican Senator Cornyn, said today, "I'm concerned who the president will turn to for advice." Should he be concerned?
No, the president's got a number of very accomplished, smart, capable people around him, and he is going to continue to lean on a lot of those people. But at the end of the day, the American people voted overwhelmingly for President Donald J. Trump. They voted for his policies, his agenda, and for him to be the ultimate decision maker. And I think that everyone can rest assured in the American people's choice on that front, and that they've made the right one.
You said
John?
earlier today that we're continuing to bring in new people every day. Could you tell us who has come in this week?
We've made several personnel announcements. I'd refer you back to the press releases of nominations and personnel announcements that have gone out. I think there's been at least 3 that have gone out earlier this week.
In the White House?
I'd be happy to forward those to you if you're not receiving the White House press releases. John?
The European Union's being very shrewd in its threats of retaliation against these tariffs, saying that they would slap tariffs on things like bed linens, which would include the swing states of Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. As manufacturers, chewing tobacco, which includes North Carolina, cranberries, the leading producer of which is Wisconsin, orange juice, again, Florida. Is the president concerned that he could hurt his political fortunes in some of these swing states if he goes ahead with these tariffs?
Look, the president has been talking about this for a long time. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Other countries have created unfair trade policies for decades that have harmed our national and economic security. The president wants a strong economy and a strong national security. And a strong U.S. economy benefits all Americans, particularly by helping us maintain a strong military and defend U.S. national security interests. And he's going to continue every day to fight for making sure that we have strong both national and economic security.
He was going to hit him where it hurts. Is he prepared to take the hit?
The president is prepared to protect our country. That is the number one priority he has as president, is to protect our economic and national security interests, and that's exactly what he's doing. Kristen?
Just about Gary Cohn. He was a noted free trader or globalist. Will the president seek another globalist, another free trader?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president's announcement on who will replace Gary.
Follow up on Gary Cohn. The president has often touted the strength of the markets. There has been some volatility. Today, the U.S. markets opened down, so did the Asian markets. Is he concerned about the volatility in the markets in the wake of Gary Cohn's resignation announcement?
The president's focused on long-term economic goals. The economy is still infinitely stronger today than it was when the president took office. We're going to continue to fight for strong economic policy, job growth, wage growth, and certainly an increased number of people that are working in this country. Again, specifically some of the actions that you're going to see through the announcement later this week.
Isn't the message from the markets, though, that they're concerned about Gary Cohn's departure and what it might mean for the stability of this White House and the U.S. economy?
I think if you look at the overall message of the markets, it's that we're doing much better under President Trump than we were doing before he took office.
The president called Gary Cohn a rare talent. Does that mean that he's open to having him come back in some other capacity, perhaps a cabinet level role?
Certainly, they maintain a strong relationship and are going to continue that relationship, and certainly Gary will continue to be an advocate for the president in a number. I'm not closing the door.
One more quickly. Can you
I'm going to move around just because I want to make sure I get to as many of your colleagues
confirm or
as
comment on the
possible.
ABC News report that a number of staffers have had their...
Kristen, I'm going to bounce around, but I'm sure one of your colleagues would be happy to pick up where you've left off.
I do have a question about something you said earlier in response to Jeff's question. You said that there's arbitration that's already been won by whom and when?
By the president's personal attorneys, and for details on that, I would refer you to them.
But you're aware of them, so what more can you share with us?
I can share that that the arbitration was won in the president's favor, and I would refer you to the president's outside counsel on any details beyond that.
Follow-up, separate question. Tomorrow, the president will be meeting with video game executives. What does he hope to accomplish, and why is he bringing them in?
The president wants to continue the conversation on every different area that we can to help promote school safety. And I'm not going to get ahead of the discussion that they're going to have tomorrow, but we think it's an important discussion to have and one that the president looks forward to.
Video games are too violent. Is that
I'm
why?
sorry?
Does he think that video games are too violent? Is that why he wants to bring them in?
It's certainly something that should be looked at and something that we want to have the conversation about.
Thanks very much. I was wondering, the president tweeted earlier about saying that the U.S. is acting swiftly on intellectual property theft. Should we understand that to mean that the 301 report is imminent? And can you kind of give us some detail about whether it might lean into tariffs or damages for intellectual property
Something
theft?
certainly that we have considered and talked about extensively, but I'm not going to get ahead of any potential announcement. Sarah?
Sarah, given the president's criticism of the Attorney General in the past for referring matters to the IG, does he then concur with several of the GOP congressmen who are calling for a second special counsel to look into FISA abuse in the Department of Justice?
The president's made clear that he has significant concerns about the current FISA process. Nothing makes the problem of FISA more clear than both the Democrat and the Republican memos that outlined that. The FBI used political campaign material to get a warrant to spy on American citizens. They failed to disclose to the judge that the dossier was funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, even as it was being used to spy on people associated with the Trump campaign. Obviously, those details alone show that the process needs to be looked at closely and reformed to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the privacy of Americans. Hallie?
Separate topic. I want to ask you about the VA, but I do want to follow up on something you have said twice now this week, which is when asked about that payment to the president, you've said that not that I'm aware of. Have you asked the president this question?
I'm sorry, can you be more specific?
Sure. To both Jeff as well as Monday to the Wall Street Journal reporter, you were asked about whether the president knew about this payment his longtime lawyer made to facilitated rather Stormy Daniels. You said then and again today, not that you're aware of. Have you asked the president this question?
Yeah, I've had conversations with the president about this, and as I outlined earlier, that this case had already been won in arbitration, and that there was no knowledge of any payments from the president, and he's denied all of these allegations.
Sarah, but I just want to, is there a reason why you're not answering the actual substance of the question on the payment itself? Because it's come up a few times now. Can you
I believe I've addressed this question pretty extensively, and ongoing litigation, I'm not going to comment any further than I already have.
I would ask about the VA I want to, which is the new IG report coming out. This is an issue that the president has been passionate about, veterans care. It finds that Secretary Shulkin was a part of failed leadership at the VA. So why is he still a part of this administration?
Look, Secretary Shulkin has done a great job, as I outlined on Tuesday, a number of the things that have been approved upon at the VA under his leadership. We're proud of the work that we've done, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to protect the veterans and help veterans in this country. It's something that the president talked about extensively on the campaign and has directed Director Shulkin to take a aggressive approach, and he's done that since becoming secretary. April.
Jordan.
Oh, sorry.
Jordan and me.
I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I want to ask about
April, that was
elephant
very polite of
trophies.
I'm always polite.
Just to be clear, I didn't suggest otherwise, because I'm sure there will be some sort of terrible comment about how I was abusive to the press otherwise. Go ahead, Jordan.
Me in particular, but go ahead.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I wanted to ask you about elephant trophies. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service put out new guidance saying it would evaluate all permit requests on a case-by-case basis. This comes after the president had suspended the previous guidance, lifting the trophy ban. The president called that practice of collecting trophies a horror show. So I'm wondering, what does the president think of this latest policy of relaxing the ban, and did he sign off on it?
Look, the President Trump's position on trophy hunting remains the same. The Fish and Wildlife's announcement is a response to a court decision impacting how trophy import applications are reviewed. Anything further, I'd refer you to the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Does the president want them to further curtail that, given his thoughts about?
The president's been clear what his position is, and that has not changed. April, I'm sorry, I was a little scattered today on the order. Go ahead.
All right, 2 topics really fast. This president was a businessman before he became a politician. And understanding business, if there's high turnover in a business, it's considered a management issue at the top. What's the issue here?
I don't believe there is one. I think that's why the first year of the administration has been so successful. As many people have outlined, we've actually accomplished a great deal of what the president campaigned on and set out to do, and we've only been here just over a year. So we certainly feel like there isn't an issue, but actually a great deal of success and a great story to tell about the president's first year.
Confidence in this administration with top people. I mean, you've had a lot of people, about 10 to 13 people in top tier positions leave.
I think the confidence should be in the president and the policies that he's outlined and the agenda that he's laid out. That's what the American people voted for, and that's certainly what we've seen enacted over the first year and a half, and I think that's been a tremendous success.
Second issue, going back to Jeff. We heard a tape of the president with Billy Bush, and now we hear about Stormy Daniels, and you're saying that it's not true. What should the American public believe, and what does the president want the American public to believe after hearing that before the election and now this?
Well, it's not to conflate 2 different things. The president's denied these allegations. We've addressed this. The American people were aware of this, voted for the president. I don't have anything more to add. John?
Thank you, Sarah. 2 quick questions on 2 separate topics. Have any countries notified the administration of their intent to file complaints with the WTO regarding the imposition of the steel and aluminum tariffs?
I'm not aware of any specific complaints.
On the other question I wanted to ask you, Michael Cohen has indicated that he was not reimbursed in any way by the Trump organization or the Trump campaign for the $130,000 that he paid to Stormy Daniels. At the same time, he's being reimbursed for his legal fees by the Trump campaign. They've already paid $214,000 in legal fees to a firm that's representing Mr. Cohen. I don't want to get you in trouble with the Hatch Act, but do you happen to know why it is that the Trump campaign is paying his legal fees?
I don't. I can't speak on behalf of the campaign. I'd refer you to them. David?
You confirm this trip to California next week, and also why is it taking so long for the president to visit California?
I can confirm the president does plan to make a trip to California next week. Why it's taken so long? I think it's because he's been busy growing the economy, creating jobs, defeating ISIS, remaking the judiciary. I'd be happy to name off some other successes, but I think that's probably enough. But yes, I can confirm the president will be headed to California next week. We'll take one last question. Alex?
Sarah, bouncing off John's question on the Hatch Act, the White House's reasoning that Kellyanne Conway did not violate the Hatch Act when she said that a candidate in Alabama would be, quote, a vote against tax cuts, weak on crime, weak on borders, strong on raising your taxes. How do you see that as not advocating against a candidate?
She didn't advocate for or against the election of any particular candidate. She simply expressed the president's obvious position specific to policy, that he have people in the House and Senate who would support his agenda. I don't think it should be a secret to anybody that the president is going to want people both in the House and Senate that are going to help push forward policies that he supports and push forward policies and his agenda. In fact, Kellyanne's statement actually shows her intention and desire to comply with the Hatch Act, as she twice declined to respond to the host's specific invitation to encourage the people of Alabama to vote for that Republican. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sarah, are you saying that
That was the press briefing with Sarah Sanders from the White House. This is the post show here at Right Side Broadcasting. Thank you for joining us. I am Steve Lookner. What did you think about the press briefing? We want to hear from you. Send me your comments at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER. And I'm going to read your comments on the air. Thank you, Jacob Seals, for producing today. And thank you to our moderators. And we want to say we are viewer supported, so if you like having a place to go besides the mainstream media for your news coverage, please consider donating to Right Side Broadcasting by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat, clicking on the dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little dollar sign there. Or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And this week especially, your donations will help us get to the President Trump rally on Saturday in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, that we will be leaving for on Friday and covering for you live on Saturday. So someone in the chat room said about 5 minutes ago, I forget, I'm trying to find it here. I don't know if I can find it, but somebody said, Tony PT said every question is a Trump attack. And I got to say, a lot of them seem to be like that today. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I'll give you a bunch of Stormy Daniels questions. Is Stormy Daniels, that story really, again, in terms of is the importance of the Stormy Daniels story compared to other news stories worth proportionate to the amount of time that was spent on it in the briefing? That's one question I have. And also repeated questions, like April Ryan seemed to ask the same question, like some reporter asked at the beginning, was asking about like, hey, why are so many people leaving the White House? Isn't this chaotic? And then April Ryan's question like 10 minutes later was something like, hey, all these people are leaving the White House. What does that say about President Trump's management style? It's like basically the same question. It's really not a different question. But, you know, here's a question I thought was a great question. I love this question. I thought it was about an important story that isn't being covered that much and also was not asked in a negative way. Steve Herman from VOA, he said, so the White House sanctioned North Korea for when Kim Jong-un killed his son-in-law using poison gas. I think it was a nerve agent in Malaysia. And he said, given that the White House sanctioned North Korea for that, now that there's been these reports, we just did a stream on it, that there's a suspected poisoning that has happened in this week where the Russian government is suspected of poisoning a former Russian spy in England with nerve gas. And Steve Herman said, so does the White House plan on taking any kind of similar action against Russia? That was a great question. It wasn't asked with any kind of bias. It wasn't asked with any kind of criticism or praise. It was just saying, here's this important news story. We haven't heard from the White House about it yet. What is the White House position on that? I thought that was a fantastic question, and it wasn't just wasn't some sort of criticized Trump, veiled criticism of Trump, and it was about a story which was actually quite important, I thought, which isn't getting that much coverage. But so many questions on the Stormy Daniels and the number of people leaving the White House, and it's like, if you want to ask one question on this, fine. It's like, are those stories, especially the Stormy Daniels, the mainstream media covering that so much today. I haven't seen mainstream media at all flipping around covering the story in England at all of a possible Russian assassination of a Russian on English soil with a nerve agent. And also it's interesting because the mainstream media seems to be so concerned about Russia, but then when there's this big international story about Russia, they don't cover it at all. So I thought that was, but whatever. That's my little tirade about the press briefing. I like them to ask genuine questions that aren't veiled criticisms about stories in proportionate to the actual importance of the story. That's what I want out of the briefings. So, but let me know what you thought about the press briefing. Write to me on Twitter @Lookner. I didn't even see, honestly, any real news in the briefing. Maybe there's news. I don't even want to talk about it really because I think it's so unimportant. But at some point, Sarah Sanders said that the Trump camp had won some arbitration in the past about the Stormy Daniels case, and it's like, maybe that's news, I don't know, but I'm not getting lost reading tons about getting into the minutia of that story. But feel free to write to me about it if you want. Steve K. writes in, the press asks the same questions over and over and expects a different answer. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Therefore, is the press corps insane? LOL. A lot of the questions, there was a lot of questions where there just weren't a lot, there was not a lot of new information. So I thought a good question was when she was asked, have any countries notified the White House that they'll be filing a WTO, a World Trade Organization, complaint about the tariffs from President Trump? And she said she's not aware that any countries have. There's a question at the beginning. She did say we would hear something from President Trump. He would sign something by the end of the week talking about he would sign something by the end of the week on tariffs. So his tariff proposal would be made concrete and put into effect by the end of the week. That's not really news, though, because I'd seen that report this morning. She did say there were potential carve-outs for Mexico and Canada and other countries based on national security considerations. So I guess if they can argue that their imports are not, though their imports to America are not affecting national security, then maybe there can be carve-outs for them and they won't have tariffs put on their aluminum and steel. But that, again, wasn't really news because that had been out there before. She was asked, are there names of people? She was asked about particular people, whether they were being considered for the Gary Cohn job. Gary Cohn has resigned last night. He's going to be leaving soon. Of chief economic advisor in the White House, she wouldn't confirm any names. There was this elephant trophy band that I wanted to read some more about. I feel like I read about it like months ago. And she said it was the Fish and Wildlife Service and not Trump. So let's see if I can find the story for you. Hold on. Another autoplay video, which I'm going to have to stop in a second because every website has autoplay videos on them. All right. Here's a story which says Trump administration lifts ban on importing body parts of elephants shot by trophy hunters. Now, she said this was a response to some legal decision. Let me see if I can find anything out of here. It says the Trump administration has quietly decided to reverse an Obama-era rule banning Americans from importing body parts of American elephants killed for sport. It comes after Donald Trump branded big game trophy hunting a horror show last year, and Sarah Sanders reiterated that's his view in the press briefing. In November, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced it would lift a ban on elephants imported from Zimbabwe and Zambia, maintaining wealthy hunters would help raise money for conservation efforts. Okay, so that's the thinking, is that I think that looks like the reasoning there. A public outcry at the decision prompted the U.S. president to intervene. But more than 3 months later, Ryan Zinke, the Interior Secretary, issued a letter dated March 1st announcing the importing of elephant trophies would now be approved on a case-by-case basis. The letter cites a long-running lawsuit challenging the ban filed by the Safari Club and the lobbying arm of the NRA. Let's see. So this seems kind of complex here. So two questions I have is, first of all, to really understand the story, we would need to know the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says allowing elephants to be imported by trophy hunters would help raise money for conservation efforts. So there's a good question to be asked about whether it is true that if you could allow wealthy hunters to import elephants into the country which they've hunted, would that actually save more elephants? I don't know, but that's a reason being given. So that's something to if you want to understand the story, that would have to be gotten into. Then also there's this thing saying being approved on a case-by-case basis. So it looks like the Fish and Wildlife Service isn't just saying, hey, hunters, you can bring in any kind of elephants you want who you hunt. It's saying we'll approve them on a case-by-case basis. So I have a question on what would determine the decisions in those cases. That's an important issue. And then the letter cites this long-running lawsuit. What exactly does the letter say about it? I don't know. So I guess my point is about this is this. As with a lot of these stories, the headline that you might hear is, Trump allows hunted elephants to be imported into country, whereas it had been banned before. The story isn't as simple as that. I just gave you some big questions we would need to answer to really understand the story. So I don't know the background on that. It's just a lot of these stories get portrayed, and often when they're anti-Trump stories, but a lot of different stories get portrayed in the media as if they're very simple, and you can talk about them in one headline, and it's this big outrage, and everybody gets outraged without really understanding what's going on in the story. So to me, a lot more to understand about that story before I could form an intelligent opinion on it. Let's see here. So we're taking your comments on the air. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Carl Peterson sent a video of YouTube changing his stream from, let's see here, from the White House briefing, I think, to Fox. Carl, it would be great if you could post that. Could you post it and say, post it publicly and say it to at YouTube and at Team YouTube and at YouTube. Like you could just say, hey, at YouTube and at Team YouTube, why are you switching my stream from at RSB Network to something else? If you just did that and posted that video, that would be awesome, because Carl Peterson just sent us a video which shows his stream being automatically switched by YouTube off of this broadcast to the Fox News broadcast. Also, YouTube didn't send out a notification for this event or the coverage I did right before that of what's going on in England. They didn't send out a notification for either thing. No notifications. Jason Thornton writes in, prostitutes, OMG. He says, Steve, where do I begin? That had to be one of the worst pressers on record. Same poor questions over and over again. Apparently, the study of the English language isn't required or doing your own research. One of the lazy, incompetent reporters asked a question on video games that should have been easily Googled. Too bad they didn't have a Whack the Press Tards video game. I would buy that. The state of mainstream media news is lost from the days when reporters had to do actual footwork and research instead of trying to come up with the next gotcha question. Enough ranting on these useless lumps of flesh. Thanks for doing some real news coverage that doesn't make us throw up. Regards, Jason Thornton, RSBN loyalist. By the way, CNN sucks. Yeah, I do remember there was a question on video games saying the president is having a conference with video game executives. Why is he doing that? And you're saying, Jason, that person should have known that. I had heard about the meeting before. So, like, for example, on Kotaku, they had posted before the press briefing this, Trump versus video games, what to expect from tomorrow's White House meeting. And they said the White House will hold a meeting with members of the video game industry to talk about gun violence. And it talks about Trump has had a vendetta against violent video games since well before he was elected president of the United States. So he wrote on Twitter, in 2012, video game violence and glorification must be stopped. It is creating monsters. Now, and he's also said recently, he's talked about video games recently. So the point here is about the question, and the question seemed to be something like, is the president against violence in video games or something, which I think you're saying, Jason, isn't that a bit odd of a question because he has said he thinks that there's too much violence in video games. Now, maybe a better question might have been, I guess, or maybe what the president was getting at was like, what specifically is the president going to propose or something? But it doesn't seem like, it seems out there. I mean, I just read you a story which quoted President Trump as saying he's against violence in video games. So it was a bit of an odd question. I agree with you there, Jason. There was also a story about Kellyanne Conway and the Hatch Act, which I've heard people talk about. I'm not really familiar with the story. This is Kellyanne Conway violated federal law in Alabama election, and it says Kellyanne Conway ran afoul of federal laws last year by expressing preferences for one candidate and against another in Alabama's special Senate election, a federal investigator said in a report released Tuesday. And it said the report had been submitted to the president for political action. The White House pushed back against the findings. The White House said Kellyanne Conway did not advocate for or against the election of any particular candidate. She simply expressed the president's obvious position that he have people in the House and Senate who support his agenda. So they say she didn't violate the Hatch Act. I think the Hatch Act says something like you can't support a particular candidate when you're actually in certain offices. Let me see if I can find you the exact definition of the Hatch Act. What is the Hatch Act? No, CNN autoplay video. This article doesn't exactly say what it is. Wikipedia says what it is. It is a federal law whose main provision prohibits employees in the executive branch of the federal government, except the president, vice president, and certain high-level officials, from engaging in some forms of political activity. Partisan political activity, it says lower there. Anyways, so that was asked about. Hey, if you have any more comments, write to me on Twitter @Lookner. Paula Hurst writes in, we do not care about Stormy Daniels. The press needs to give up on that one. The thing about the whole Stormy Daniels thing that's funny is, like, it's not even over whether he had an affair with this woman, and it's not even over, like, whether Michael Cohen admitted he paid Stormy Daniels money, and they reached this agreement to have her not talk about this. So I don't even know, why is it a big scandal now? Is the scandal whether or not the president knew about the payment, or whether or not the president reimbursed Michael Cohen? Is that really worth, like, so much coverage on the news today, March 7th, 2018, at the expense of other stories? Oh, the president's going to go to California next week, and now that wasn't news; that was known before. But I'm wondering if there are going to be protests in California. He's going to visit California for the first time as president. See if I can find you something on that. I have a story from 2 weeks ago. How about one more recently? Oh, he's going to stop in San Diego to view the border wall prototypes. So I wonder if there are going to be big protests when he visits. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. I'm guessing there'll be some protests. All right, last call for comments, everyone. Last call for comments on this broadcast. So if you want to write to me on Twitter, at Lookner, at Lookner. Let me know what you thought about the press briefing. We will be traveling on Friday to Moon Township, Pennsylvania, to cover President Trump's rally there. He is campaigning for Rick Saccone, who is running for the open house seat in the 18th Congressional District Special Election. We will have live coverage of that election next Tuesday here at Right Side Broadcasting. So we hope you join us for the rally coverage and for the election coverage. Thanks again to our moderators, JC, Jan, Rio Frank, and everybody else there in the chat room, and Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Andy Morrow says YouTube redirected him to the White House stream for the broadcast. We're sorry about that, Andy. We don't know why they do that. Feel free to tweet to YouTube, at YouTube and at Team YouTube, and complain about it, so they know that you're upset about it. Royal Kitty writes in, I care more about smoking orangutan prompts activists to call for closure of Indonesian zoo than Stormy Daniels crap. Did they not ask about the California lawsuits in the briefing? There's a story today where, Jeff Sessions announced that the Justice Department is suing California over several laws, sanctuary laws in California, that the Justice Department says are illegal. I don't even know if there were any questions about that. Were there no questions about this in the briefing? They asked a number of Stormy Daniels questions and no questions about this? Maybe there was one and I missed it? I don't recall. Christine Bestian has made a donation. Thank you, Christine. She says, looking forward to rewinding the show. She missed it. It's okay, Christine. We appreciate the donation. Your donations keep us on the air and allow us to travel to Pennsylvania to cover President Trump's rallies and all that. So if you want to donate, bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $sign or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. All right, I think I have gotten to your questions. And I think I'm going to wrap up this stream right now. So we appreciate Jake Seals for producing. You can follow Jake Seals at @JacobRSBNMusic. We thank you all for writing in and sending in your comments. And all the moderators, great work by the moderators as usual. And if there's big news later today, we will certainly come back on the air and cover it. So be sure to subscribe to us at Right Side Broadcasting. Click the notifications bell, although often they won't send you notifications because they hate Right Side Broadcasting at YouTube. Also, follow us on Facebook, Right Side Broadcasting, on Twitter at RSB Network. You can follow me on Twitter. I post about breaking news all the time, at Lookner on Twitter. And we are on Periscope. We show a lot of our stuff on Periscope now, RSBN TV on Periscope. Thank you for saying thanks in the chat room. Tom O'Neill, Jamie B., Flying Eagle. Yes, Chris Rimby said in the chat room, no question about the lawsuit over the sanctuary laws, but many questions about Stormy Daniels. YouTube 13 says, why ask questions about important matters? Emma says, nope, there was not a single question about that. Yeah, a lot of you. Swoosh and Gale also said no questions about the California lawsuit. So that's really proportionate importance. Multiple questions on the Stormy Daniels thing and no questions on the Justice Department suing the state of California. It's great. Good job, press. Thank you, Lorette Loss, Tia Marie, JC Jan, Kakats, Barry H., Case Critters, Kenneth Vaughn, Jason Thornton, Swoosh, Tia Marie, and everyone else out there in the chat room and watching out there. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the stream now. Thank you for joining us. If there's breaking news later today, we will be on the air. But for now, I am Steve Lookner. For Jacob Seals and all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting, have a great day, and we will see you soon.